So let me show you this guy. His name is James Marshall. In 1848, he was building a sawmill in what is near modern-day Sacramento. When he looked down, and he discovered something golden shiny on the ground, and it was a big chunk of gold. In 2 weeks after he discovered gold, the rumors had gotten out about his discovery, and the California gold rush began. In a short time, in 1848, 300,000 people had moved into that area in an attempt to strike it rich. Literally, people would leave their boats on the California coastline, abandon it, and go to run, to race, to get their claim, their deed. On top of that, entire communities were abandoned as everyone moved to this spot to try and strike it rich. It's a fascinating part of our history. Unfortunately, there's a very sad and dark side to this part of our history as well as a nation. The people that were most affected were the Native Americans. The population, from the time that the gold rush started to the time that it really fizzled out, the Native American population went from 150,000 to 30,000. These people were shoved off of their hunting grounds. They were killed by our illnesses. If they resisted, they were just killed. They were sold into slavery. Their waters were polluted by the chemicals used. I mean, we just destroyed this people group. All in our attempt to get more. Isn't it amazing what people will do in the endless pursuit of more? The sacrifices they will make. Thankfully, that's just part of our history, and people don't make decisions like that anymore in our society. Yeah, unfortunately, as this historian is right, our society is marked by inextinguishable discontent. Isn't that an interesting phrase? Inextinguishable discontent. What he's saying is, we are never done buying, shopping, spending, upgrading, right? If you were trying to summarize American society in one word, one of the choices you would probably lean towards is the word more. Because it's about more. I've got to have more. And so the result is, there are all kinds of consequences in our amazing, endless pursuit of more. And there's a lot of damage being done in our society. We just don't think about it because nobody's going to tell you that, because if you stop spending more, oh my goodness, that would be, or pursuing more, that would be bad for our society, right? But the reality is, there's a lot of damage being done. If you want to see a little bit of this, here's what you go and Google. Google this phrase this week. Materialism plus mental health. Google that phrase. You will be amazed at the articles that come up. Do you know that materialism, as our desire for more and more and more and more continues to escalate, it's being associated, psychologists are associating with higher levels of depression, anxiety, and antisocial behavior. Higher levels of depression, anxiety, and antisocial behavior. We are mentally damaging ourselves. I've told you before, we are the most medicated society in the history of the world. It's not working. But it's not just what it's doing to our brains, what it's doing to our souls. Many people have no time for God because they are constantly in pursuit of more, or they're exhausted from the pursuit of more by the time Sunday morning rolls around. It's like we don't have time to think about God. The Bible talks about some people eager for money have wandered away from the faith, and it says pierced themselves with many griefs. Some of you have wandered away from the faith. Maybe it's been a while since you even thought about God. Some of you may have gone days this last week without even considering Him. It's the natural way of the world, right? It damages us relationally. It damages us financially. I mean, my goodness, the savings rate is 0. The debt rate continues to escalate. Because we have to have more, and we have to have it right now. This is the world that we live in right now. And on the other side of it, here we are in this amazing pursuit, endless pursuit of more. It's damaging to us. And on the opposite side of all this is the word contentment. Look at what this word means. Contentment is a state of being happy and satisfied. Are you satisfied today? Does that describe you? To be free from care because of satisfaction with what you already own. Is that you? Are you free from care because you're so satisfied with what you currently own? Are you content with your life right now? Your home, your closet, your looks, your vehicle, your income, your job, your relationship status. Are you content? Satisfied with where you're at? Now some of you, a slide like this raises a question like, but Brian, I drive a 1997 Ford and it's about to die. I mean, are you saying I can't upgrade it? I got to keep that thing forever or else I'm not content? No, I'm not saying that. Or you're like, I just ripped my jeans. Do I have to wear them now? Do I have to sew them? I mean, is that what I have to do? Where's the line? Where's the line? Great question. And really, really important to wrestle with that question. Because obviously things come up and we have needs. We have to address those without becoming materialistic. Without letting materialistic things and money get into the spot they cannot be in, or they will damage us. So that's what we're going to try and wrestle with today. Would you grab your notes and a pen? We're going to talk about this, how to learn to be content. If you didn't get notes when you walked in today, and you need them, they're on the, they were on the back table. I don't know, are we out of them? There's 3 left, so they're on the back table. If you need one, just slip your hand up and we can have someone walk around to you. So, or you can walk back and get a cup of coffee too. So I have really good news about the subject of contentment, and it's right here in this verse. Paul, who wrote half of the books of the New Testament, said this, I don't say this out of need, for I have learned to be content in whatever circumstances I have. And he goes on, when I'm poor or rich, I'm content. If I'm in jail or free, I'm content. I mean, how many of you could say, he was in prison just because he wouldn't stop talking about Jesus. How many of you are like, I'm in prison today, but I am so satisfied with where I'm at. So this guy knew something that we don't know. And so you can learn this. You have peace. Just think about that word peace. Not anxiety, peace. Wouldn't that be worth having? Let's see what Paul can teach us about this today. Number one, and I actually have 2 things I want you to write down. So the first one goes in the blank there. Establish a reasonable standard of living. And that's what I started writing, but as I went through this again and again and again, above that line, I want you to write the sentence below. Figure out what you actually need, because that's really what that first one means. So establish a reasonable standard of living, but what I'm really saying is what you need to do is kind of just figure out what you actually need. And this is a message you will not hear anywhere except in a church like this. It's rare. There are very few places you can go to hear somebody say, hey, just figure out what you need and be content with that. Right? Because that's not the world that we live in. The evidence of how crazy our world is found in so many places. I've talked about this before. Look at this. House sizes in America. In 1973, the average house size was 1,660 square feet. By 2016, it has risen to 2,687 square feet. That's the average house size in America now. It's more than 1,000 square feet bigger in those decades, and we have smaller families living in these bigger houses. But we're not content. We need more. Do you think that number is going to stop growing? It's like, we've got enough square footage now. We're fine. This is just one area where we could show it's just more and more and more. I need more. I don't have enough. I've got to have more and more and more and more. It's always about more. And we have so much more than we ever need that we end up wasting so much of what we have. Do you know what percentage of food in America goes right into the dump? 40%. Does that bother you? 40%. We don't even use what we have, what we think we need, that we spend our money to buy. There are people in this world who've bought stuff, never worn it, never used it, sold it on a garage sale. Gave it away to Goodwill. I am one of them. Or maybe I used it once. Or maybe I bought it and I thought it looked okay in the store, and then I got home and I didn't like it and I gave it away. This is the world we live in. It's always about more. We are never content. We're never happy. So you need to really start to figure out what is it that you actually need. And it comes again, let's go back to that guy named Paul, see what he can teach us. He said, here's what I've learned about contentment. If I have food and clothing, I'll be content with that. So he figured out, what do I actually need? Now, Paul was a single guy. He had no wife, no kids to provide for. So his needs were less. He needed less. On top of that, he was a tent maker by profession, so he could just make shelter. And he could have an income wherever he went because of his skill. His ability. So he didn't live in Wisconsin where you need a little more than food and clothing. Because you can't cover up in a blizzard under a loaf of bread. You need some kind of shelter. So for him, that's what he needed, though. The point was he actually stopped to think about this. What do I need? What do I need? I need these basic things. I need food, because I'm going to get hungry, and I need clothing, because when you're talking about Jesus and you're buck naked, people are not listening. So you got to have some clothes on, you got to have some food in your belly, that's what I need. So he started to think about, what do I actually need? You need to think about that. What do you need? Because the reality is all of us have more than food and clothing. I'm not talking to one person today is like, that's all I have. These clothes, that's it. And I got some bread and peanut butter at home, and that's it. Well, you have a home. You walked here. I mean, you wouldn't have a car. You wouldn't have anything. You wouldn't have a home. We all have more than food and clothing. So some of you may be already going, well, am I wrong to have more than food and clothing? No. Do you know how many times in the Bible God blessed people with wealth way beyond what they needed? It's not a sin to have more than food and clothing at all. So you don't have to feel guilty. You're like, oh, thank goodness for that. You don't need to feel guilty. You just need to make sure you keep money and possessions in the right frame of mind. Because they will constantly try and put themselves in first place in your mind. You can't let it happen. So when you're about to make a purchase, because some of you are sitting here, this is terrible timing for you because you were on your way to the store after this. You're like, I was heading to the mall. I was heading to buy a car this week. Okay, sorry to do this to you. But you really need to stop and ask some questions to make sure the purchase you're about to make is in the right frame of mind. So here are 3 questions on your notes. So first, in light of this, do I really need this? Do I really need it? One of the most important messages we could shout to the American society today is stop defining everything you want as a need. Because everything you want isn't a need. Sometimes it's just a want and you don't actually need it. And how many things could I put on a slide like this? The newest phone is not a need. I'm sorry. I'm sorry. You don't need that. Now you may be able to afford it and it may not hurt you at all to buy it. Fine. Great. Go ahead and buy the newest phone, but it's not a need. I mean, for people, my age and up, and this is going to be crazy talk, but there was once a time where we didn't have smartphones. We actually had to stand by a wall where this cord attached us to the wall, and it was the only time people could get us on the phone. And if you were out of the house, they couldn't reach you. It was crazy. And we survived. Newest computer. I actually worked with someone on the third one down there who literally told me every year I buy a new car. Every year. I'm like, okay. Hey, to each his own. If you can afford that and it doesn't damage your budget and it doesn't compromise your ability to be generous in this world, then you go right ahead and do that. I cannot do that and will not be doing that, but don't define it as a need, it's just a want. We put so many things on a slide like this. They're just not needs, they're wants. So keep it clear, this is a want. Okay? It's not a need, I have what I need. This is something I want in my life. So you keep it at the right level. It's just a want. Second, would I be content without this? And you really have to wrestle with this one. Would I be content, satisfied in my life if I never got this thing I want? If it's a need, you need to have that. But if it's a want, would you be content if you didn't get what you want? This is where our attitude gets really goofy. Because the reality is you have something in your mind right now that you really, 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 really want. And you want this badly. And the answer to this question, honestly for you, is no. If I don't get what I want in this area of my life, I will not be content. Then I would say to you, don't buy it, don't go after it, don't pursue it. You're not ready to go after it yet. Because if you think that thing in your head is going to make you content, is going to bring you satisfaction, you're not ready to go after it. Because you want me to tell you what will happen when you get it? You will be temporarily happy and then it will fade away. And you will be discontent again. It's in the wrong spot in your head. You got to stop long enough to get to the point where your attitude is this. I don't need this to be happy. This will not make me content. Now some of you smart Alex are sitting in your head going, oh, I can say those words. I don't need this to be happy. I'm going to go buy it now because I've said the words. It's not about just saying the words. It's about getting your heart and attitude into the position where you actually believe that. Then you're ready to make the decision about whether to purchase what you want or not. Don't just say the words. Make sure you actually believe that. And then third, will this compromise my ability to give? You have so many overextended Americans, they can't afford to be generous. And yet, as I've talked about many, many times, we have enough in America alone to solve most of the world's problems. if we weren't so busy overextending ourselves to get everything that we want because we think what we want is what we need. When we simplify our life, we can have a tremendous impact, and that's what God's purpose is for us. So one of the interesting things that I read in prepping this is a quote from a theologian named John Stott. Look at this. This really impacted me. Contentment is the secret of inner peace. So some of you came in here today full of worry, full of anxiety. And the idea of having peace in your heart, really being satisfied, sounds really attractive to you. Contentment creates that peace inside of you. When you're content, that's how you feel. He said, contentment remembers the stark truth that we brought nothing to the world, we can take nothing out of it. Life, in fact, is a pilgrimage from one moment of nakedness to another. So we should travel light, live simply. Now that was interesting, but this was profound. Our enemy is not possessions, but excess. Our battle cry is not nothing. That's not realistic. It's enough. We've got enough. Can you honestly say today, you have enough? Can you say, you have enough? If not, then you're going to have to really consider, what is it that you've put in your list? What would you say is what you actually need? Have you started to define some of your wants as needs? Do you actually have what you need? Do you have enough? You want to learn to be content? This is where you start. You've got to really figure out what you need. Now, the second thing is this. You've got to develop a grateful attitude, which if I told you today before you came in, hey, we're going to be talking about contentment, many of you could have guessed, oh, you'll be talking about gratitude. Because this is such an important element of learning to be content. You want to learn to be content, you better learn to be grateful. I had no concept of how ungrateful a human being I was till 1988 when I graduated from high school and spent the summer in India teaching good news clubs to all over the capital city of New Delhi, India. I stayed with an Indian family in 1988. They were considered middle class, but it was the lowest level of poverty I'd ever seen. This is the apartment that we stayed in. Gracia, Mersha, and Bernard were the kids' names, the three kids of the family that I stayed with. My partner from Texas was Kevin, he's there in the picture. This is their family room and their dining room in the place that we stayed. Middle class. This is middle class in the capital city of New Delhi. Gracia, the one turnaround smile, we had a big smile, you can see her foot stuck out right there. She had polio. And yet look at that smile on that kid's face. They had nothing, and they were so happy. It was mind-blowing to me. This is the mom the family stayed with. That's her kitchen. The whole thing. I've shown you everything. I backed up against the far wall and took the picture. You can see her pantry there. You can see her cooking on the little, like a Coleman stove. That's it. That's all she had in there. And she made rice 3 times a day. And we ate rice every meal. And they were so happy to have it. How many of you, if you only had to eat rice 3 times a day from this day forward, would be happy? If you wanted to see real poverty, you just walked outside in the capital city of New Delhi, you'd walk a few blocks and you'd walk into these slum areas. You can see the buildings, the apartments around it. You would just walk out into these open spots and there would be just acres and acres of these huts. All they are is mud and rocks stacked up with trash for roofs. And you walk through and saw unbelievable things for a boy from small town Wisconsin. I mean, here's a mom bathing her kids, and this was where they would use the bathroom, they would bathe here, and that pump was where they were drawing the same water out. So they were dying here constantly. The house, this entire section here, that's a house. Right here. That whole thing, that's the whole house where a family lived. Not all behind it, just that one piece. And they were happy to have shelter. It was unbelievable poverty. And that house comes up to about my waist. I've never seen anything like this in my entire life. I'm in the back rows, you can tell. And I towered over everyone. And we would teach these clubs, and kids would come out, and they're wearing all the clothing they had. When you think about that verse, if I have food, if I have clothing, I'll be content with that. I never knew how ungrateful a human being I was until I went there. And all of a sudden I realized how many things I have never, ever, ever thanked God for. Being able to go to a fridge and open it up and actually have food in there. Being able to go take a drink from your kitchen faucet without wondering, is this going to kill me? Because the water isn't clean. Having clothing, more than one set. Air conditioning, oh my goodness, thank God for that. Eating out, they never eat out. Rice, 3 meals a day. A bathtub, soap and shampoo. Medical care, that bottom one. You know how many days in my life I've ever worried about getting polio? Never have, never will. Not in America, but they do. I have taken so much for granted. And I was so ungrateful. I did not know it. Now, I'm not saying this to make you feel guilty or bad. Not at all. Here's what the Bible says about it. If God gives a man wealth and property, and compared to the rest of the world, just in case you don't know this, we have wealth. None of you will ever live in a mud hut, stacked up a few feet high, and raise a family, hoping to scavenge through the dump to find enough to live on. You'll never have to do this. We are incredibly wealthy, based on every comparison in the world. So if you have wealth and property, you should feel really, really guilty about that. No, not at all. God doesn't want that for you. He wants you to be grateful. Would you say thank you to God? That's what he wants for you. Be grateful. And look at this next part. Enjoy what he's given you. Do you know that God wants you to enjoy what you have? It's like, I'm going home and I'm playing Xbox. I am going to enjoy what I have. I enjoy it. He says it's okay to be grateful. It's okay to have more than you need. It's okay to enjoy what you have. And here's why. You know why? Because he gave it to you as a gift. For whatever reason, he let us be born here, not there. So be grateful. You want to know how important gratitude is to God? Then all you have to do is, my favorite field of study is neuroscience. If I was back in college days, starting over, I would probably go into this field because this is amazing what they're discovering. So they can hook your brain up to machines and watch what happens when you complain about something. Watch what happens when you worry about something, or watch what happens when you're grateful about something. It's so interesting. You ever heard of Wellbutrin? If you've ever been depressed or struggling, you've gone in and maybe they've given you a prescription for Wellbutrin. It creates the substance in your brain called dopamine, which is a pleasure and reward and motivation chemical in your brain. Makes you feel good. Every addict, their addiction creates dopamine so they feel better. That's why it's an addiction. They keep doing it so they feel better, and doing it so it feels better. So you can give you a drug to create dopamine in your brain. Do you know what else neuroscience tells us creates dopamine in your brain? Gratitude. Isn't that fascinating? We know that if you will be grateful, if you will express gratitude, dopamine will be created in your brain and you'll feel better. So what do you think the God who created our bodies wants us to do if they actually create the pleasure, this pleasure drug in our brain by being grateful? What does he want us to do? He wants us to be grateful. Ever heard of Prozac? Prozac creates serotonin. This is about mood. If you've ever been depressed, maybe they put you on Prozac as an antidepressant. It affects your overall state of mind, how you feel about yourself and the external world at a point in time. Serotonin is one of the most important chemicals in your brain. And Prozac can create serotonin. Do you know what else creates serotonin in your brain? Gratitude. Did you know that? No wonder we're the most medicated society in the history of the planet, because we're also one of the least grateful societies in the history of the planet. So we have to compensate for how our bodies were supposed to work by being grateful for what we have by using medicine. And there is nothing wrong with medicine. I am not putting down anyone who's ever used Wellbutrin, Prozac, or anything like that, because we're a product of the society that we live in, which tells you, you don't have enough. And you should, what do you have to be grateful for? Because they have the iPhone 27, and you only have the iPhone 19, your life is over. They drive a brand new car. Your car's like 5 years old. This is ridiculous. They have this brand new shirt. They have this, look at their kitchen and look at your kitchen. And so obviously we're a product of the society we're in, but we're not supposed to be. We're supposed to be what God made us to be, and what He made us to be is grateful. And gratitude will change your whole life, because God made it so that it will. So how do we do it? First, remember that gratitude is a choice. In every situation you're in, gratitude is a choice. You get to choose what you focus on no matter what you're going through in life. That's why this verse is in the Bible. Take a look at this. Paul, again, wrote this. He said, in everything give thanks, for this is the will of God in Christ Jesus for you. And I'll give you an example later, of an amazing example of somebody who's grateful in the middle of a horrific situation. And it'll change you, because it creates those positive chemicals in your brain. So, by the way, if you have somebody who's really, really, really struggling in life, maybe they just had something bad happen to them, don't quote this to them. You just need to be grateful. You need to find something to be thankful for in the middle of this. They will punch you. They will not want to hear that. And by the way, that's not what they need to hear in that moment. This is for you. Let's think about yourself. Are you a grateful person? If you're in the middle of something difficult, are you grateful for anything in the middle of those difficult circumstances? Do you know that the neuroscience report that I was referring to actually said, even when you start thinking about, so let's say you walk in and you're like, I'm going to find 5 things from yesterday to be grateful for. Do you know that what they've discovered is just the act of searching for something to be grateful creates those positive chemicals in your brain, even if you can't find anything? It's the act alone that triggers the positive impact on your brain. This is how God made us. Gratitude is a choice. No matter what I'm going through, I can choose to focus on something, find something to be grateful for. So let me give you an example of this. So it's amazing how many times God has me prep these things and things happen. So I've been remodeling a house for a little while, and I had really good bids last fall, and I got more done on my house than I was allowed, that they thought I was going to be able to do. I got a garage put up. So I talked to my banker, and it's like, look at all this value I've added to my house. It wasn't even supposed to be there, so let me keep going. So we'll have it reappraised, because I've got a garage now and I got a metal roof and I wasn't supposed to have that. So it should have added a lot of extra value, and I wanted to remodel my kitchen. My kitchen is very small. It is, it's not very nice. An old 150-year-old stove, I'm exaggerating. An old disgusting fridge, and I've scrubbed it, and the cabinets are terrible and small, and there's no counter space, and I'm like, had all these dreams, had a bid done, had it all ready to go, and I got the appraisal this week, and they said if you add to the kitchen, you remodel the kitchen, and you do this other thing you're going to do, the value of the house will go down, not up. I'm like, that's not even possible. But what it meant was no kitchen. And I was prepping this message. So I'm like, well, the stove works. Thank you, God. And the fridge works, keeps all my food cold. Good, thank you, God. And the cabinets hold everything I need them to hold. And I'm not a very good cook anyway. So, I mean, I have a lot to be grateful for. I really like frozen pizza and the little things that I buy. So I made my focus not on what I didn't have, but what I do have, because gratitude's always a choice. I can choose it, so can you. Second, you've got to develop some kind of habit of gratitude. You can't just listen to a message like this and then walk out here, because you won't be grateful if you don't intentionally do this. How are you going to put gratitude into your life? So different things. I used to, when I was a young Christian, what I would try and do before I fell asleep every night is think about 10 things that I would thank God for from that day. Never even hard. Some families I know about, when they sit down for the evening meal together, they always start by, let's talk about something that we can be grateful for from this day today. And they start that way. Can you imagine if kids were raised this way? Can you imagine if we started our meals together with, let's just talk about what we're grateful for from today? What if they were focusing on that? With them, forget them. What if we were? I mean, what if we do this? I used to be better at this. In my notebook where I write down the things I'm praying about, I had this phrase that said 10 things. And whenever I get to 10 things, I would always stop and thank God for 10 things. It was never hard to come up with 10. And I let that habit go. And I need a habit. What will you do to make gratitude a part of your day-to-day existence? And then third, compare down. You will never, ever, 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 ever be grateful by comparing up. It'll destroy any sense of contentment you have. Gratitude and contentment are combined. You can't be grateful. You can't have contentment without gratitude. But you live in the most marketed to society in the history of the planet, and every commercial you see says, oh, poor you. You don't have this. You don't have this. You still have this. Oh. They're constantly trying to make you compare up, so they create desire inside of you so that you go after the things that they tell you you really, really need. And by the way, they're just wants. So when you're feeling discontent, one of the best things you do is compare down, which is what India made me do. So I found this online. When life gets hard, try to remember the life you complain about is only a dream to some people. Because billions of people live like this, not millions. China and India, the poverty levels in those two nations, the most populated on the planet, it's staggering poverty. Life gets hard, try to remember the life you complain about is only a dream to some people. That's how they live right there. You're looking at it. You got anything to be grateful about? The life you complain about is only a dream to some people. The life you dream about or complain about is only a dream to some people. Do you have anything to be grateful for? And again, this isn't about guilt. It's about gratitude. They are not the same thing. Are you able to be grateful to God for what you have? So that's the second piece of being content. You define, here's what I need, everything else is a want. You develop a grateful attitude, and one more thing, which again, you're not going to hear outside of places like this that teach it. You've got to learn how to pursue the real treasure in this world. There is a real treasure in this world. And it's not money, and it's not stuff. There was a man who was very successful in business, and one day he overextended in a significant way. He put all his chips in on a business venture. He bet everything on this. And he lost everything, including his house, his vehicles repossessed, all of his savings gone. He went in to see his pastor, and he said, I've lost everything. And the pastor said, oh no, I'm so sorry to hear that you've lost your faith. He said, no, I haven't lost my faith. He said, oh, I'm so sorry to hear that you've lost all of your integrity and character. He said, well, I haven't lost that. And he said, well, then I'm sorry to hear that you've lost your salvation. He said, no, I haven't lost my salvation. So the pastor said, so you still have your faith, your integrity and character, and your salvation? Seems like you've not really lost the things that really matter. I read that story, I'm like, oh, that was a little convicting, because all of us would probably say the same thing. If the economy turned and you lost your job and your home and your savings and your possessions, you'd probably say, I lost everything. And the reason is because this is the message of our world. All that's real, all that's really and valuable is money and stuff. That's what's real. And if you lost your money and you lost your stuff, you'd have lost everything. And a story like that makes us go, really? Do you know the depression rate among billionaires is higher than the normal population? Wait a second, that can't be. They have money and stuff, and that's what's real, and that's what's valuable. And you know what you get when you get it? Depression. Because it can't satisfy the human heart. Do you know what can? Another famous theologian, Augustine, said, you, God, have made us for yourself, and our hearts are restless until they find their rest in you. The Creator made us for a relationship with Him, and if you want to have true, lasting peace and satisfaction, no matter what your circumstances are, connect with God. And if you build that relationship with Him deeply, you can be content in any circumstance, like Paul said, whether I'm in jail or whether I'm free, I'm content. Because can you have God in jail? Yeah. You can have God anywhere. Can you have a car in jail? No. Can you have a lot of money in jail? Probably not. But you can have God anywhere. And if He becomes the real treasure in your life, then you can learn to be content and peace-filled anywhere. So how do you do this? First, you remember that there is one real treasure in this world. You've got to put this in your mind. There's only one. It's not money, it's not stuff, it's not possessions. None of those things are the real treasure of this world. Nothing on this slide is the treasure. You can chase it all. And so many other things like people are chasing in this world. None of these are the treasure. And if you chase them, you will be discontent. Even if you get them, you'll be discontent. They'll bring you temporary happiness, but not lasting satisfaction. They're not what's real. That's why Paul said this. He said, again, back to Paul. Everything else is worthless when compared to the infinite value of knowing Jesus. The relationship with him is the treasure. And he can have that anywhere. For his sake, I've discarded everything else, counting it all as garbage, so that I could gain Jesus. So here's what he's saying. If there's one treasure in this world, it's Jesus. If I can know him, boy, I will have everything I want, and everything else compared to this treasure is garbage. And by the way, he's right. Everything you can buy and possess is garbage. It may be in beautiful form right now, but I promise you someday it'll be in a landfill. I promise you that. Don't care what you buy. It's going to fall apart. Go look at our landfills. They're just filled with yesterday's treasures, right? But boy, if Jesus becomes your treasure, then you can have treasure no matter where you're at. So 2 questions to help you figure out what your treasure is. First, once I have, then I'll be satisfied. What would you put in that blank? What would you put in that blank? Once I have a new job? Once I make this level of income? Once I have this new relationship? What is it you put in that blank? Once I have this, then I'll be satisfied. The second question is just something I loved. I read in a book once that said, here's your 2 options. If God came to you one day and said, here's your 2 options. God said, you can have everything you want, but you'll never have any sense of me in this world. I mean, everything you want. Want $1 billion? Here's $1 billion. Want a huge mansion? Want brand new cars? A fleet of cars? What do you want? You want everything. You have everything you want, but you have no sense of God in this world. Or you can have tremendous, deep relationship with God, or nothing you want. Which do you choose? Most of us, unfortunately, would choose option 1 because we think that what's real and what really matters is all the stuff in the world. It's why we're in the shape that we're in. We pursue these temporary things that can be taken from us, rather than the relationship with God that can never be taken. The story I read years ago that moved me so much in this, in World War II, there was a missionary family in the Philippines. The Japanese invaded, they conquered the island, they threw the missionary family and all the other missionary families into a concentration camp. Do you know what the Japanese were like as captors in World War II? They were brutal. The missionary families got together every morning and they just begged God for freedom. Please set us free, please set us free, please set us free. And freedom became the goal. And there was a young girl, part of this family, and she was like, every day she felt worse after praying. She's like, this can't be right. So one day she went off on her own and she said, God, I'm not asking you for freedom. She said, I will stay in this prison for the rest of my life if only I can know you. Let me know you here. And all of a sudden, her whole attitude changed. Because can you have God in a concentration camp? Oh, yes, you can. That moved me so much, I put it in my prayer notebook. Only I changed prison, and I said, I'll stay in this place for the rest of my life if only I can know it. I'll stay in this place for the rest of my life if only I can know it. So you need to remember there's one treasure, and then the second part of this is, then you got to keep him in there. Once you get it, he's the treasure in this world, then you got to keep him in first place, and that's hard to do too, because you're going to walk right out and be bombarded by materialistic messages and say, you don't have enough. You got to keep him in that first place. And this is why, again, going back to what Paul said, the guy learned how to be content. He said, since then you've been raised with Christ, set your hearts on things above, where Christ is seated at the right hand of God. Set your mind on things above, not on earthly things. And so my constant prayer to God is, God, if you give me the choice today between everything I want or knowing you better today, I choose you. That is something I try and pray every single day of my life. Some days I pray it more than once. To keep me focused on it's about him, he's the treasure, not stuff. You want to see how powerful this is? There was a man named Tim who went to a Christian college in Michigan. He was very successful in business after he got out of that college. One day he called one of his professors that he really loved, and he said, "Would you come visit me? I'm in the hospital." The professor didn't know about this, so he went to the hospital. Tim had been diagnosed with leukemia a few years before that. Didn't know. It was late stage. He was dying. The professor walked into this hospital room. The mom was crying in the corner. Tim was laying on a bed, pillows between his shriveled legs. His curly hair had all fallen out. He had no energy even to roll over and look at the professor. So the professor walked over, knelt down so he could get eye to eye with Tim, and he said, "Hi, Tim." He was happy to see him. And Tim said, "I've learned something. So I've learned that life is not like a DVD player. You can't fast forward through the bad parts." He said, "But I've learned that Jesus Christ is in every frame. And right now, that's just enough. That's just enough." Just what I told you. Content, dying in a hospital bed of leukemia, because you can have God in that frame of your life. You can have the treasure when you don't even have your health. So where are you at with this today? Some of you walked in here, you are not feeling very content, weren't feeling very peaceful. Were you chasing some other treasure? It's hard. I have for years done a series like this every single year because I need it. I need to be reset. Because we're all going to walk out and turn on our TVs eventually, or turn on the radio, and we're going to hear these non-stop marketing messages that turn us away from this. I needed to be reset today. I'll tell you right now. I needed this reminder. I was feeling a level of anxiety that I don't often feel prepping this message, and I realized, going after the wrong treasure. I had a lot of conversations with God this week where I began to pray and say, "God, I don't need this to be content. I need you." And the first 20 or 30 times I said that, it was artificial. But eventually, my attitude began to change, and the peace that replaced the anxiety was so dramatic. I don't need to be anxious. I have God in the middle of this right now. In this frame of my life, He's with me. I really needed this. Maybe you did too. Maybe you've begun to define wants as needs, or you haven't been very grateful, or you've let something else become the pursuit of your life rather than God. It's time to reset today. Let me have you bow your heads as we finish up today. Maybe you're here today, you're just exploring your faith with us, and this whole idea of a real relationship with Jesus seems kind of strange to say, because many of you were raised in spiritual homes where you were taught about rules, or you were taught about rituals, or you were taught about religion, and you were never taught that you can actually get to know God. You can know Him, and the relationship with Him can change your life. And you can know Him because of what He did for all of us. We could not. Isn't it silly that you could get to know God? Doesn't that even sound strange to say I could get to know God on our own? We cannot. We have no shot of it. So God did what was required so that we could have a relationship with Him. He sent His Son 2,000 years ago to die on a cross for us. Because God the Father is perfect. And if we're going to be with Him, we have to be perfect. That's what Jesus said. Be perfect as my Father in heaven is perfect. None of us are. So Jesus came, died on a cross to pay for what we've done that's wrong so that we could be forgiven and be in a relationship with the Father. If you want a relationship with God, not rules, not rituals, with your head bowed and your eyes closed, say something like this to Him. Say, "Jesus, I'm turning to you today. I want a real relationship with you. So I've heard that you died for me to pay for what I've done. So please forgive me today. Come make your home inside of me. In Jesus' name, amen." Thanks for coming. If you don't mind signing up for anything, we'd love to have your help around here, and see you again in 2 weeks.